Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dan Nguyen with the Intentional Entrepreneur Podcast. I have a very special guest with me today. He is a 30-year experienced real estate broker, author of 2 books, and a former Mr. Teen Bodybuilder, if I'm correct, champion. Um, and I want to welcome to the show Mr. Michael O'Brien.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be here, Dan. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. Our mutual friend Michael Primus introduced us, and when he told me your background, um, I thought to myself, "Hey, for sure, I need to have Michael on the show." And so I just want to thank you for your time in advance and sharing your story about your experience as an entrepreneur and what you've had to go through, right, to get you where you are today. But before we kind of get to kind of all that, can you share a little bit about yourself and what you did before today?
Right. Sure. Absolutely. I would consider myself probably a serial entrepreneur, even though I think that verbiage is being overused over the last few years. I got started in, let's just go back to high school. In high school, I had a little business. The business was irrelevant, wasn't a big deal. I got into college and began college and was bored within the first semester and wondering, gosh, I'm going to just learn on all of this stuff. And I don't know how that's going to help me. I really wanted to have some sort of business because I believed that was the way that was to make the most money, if I'm honest here today. And so, I was looking at fancy cars and all that. And certainly there was professions that looked appealing, but a lot of school. And I was not a great student in school, particularly when I was in high school. Speed forward a little bit. I got into college and I ended up starting a business, and that business was pretty successful and it thrived. And I brought another good friend of mine in from high school and got involved, and we carried that business on for about 8 to 10 years, and that transitioned into something else. Meanwhile, when I was 21 years old, I became a real estate agent, and then also because I was going to college, I got my broker's license. So for a period of, I think, about 2 years, I was the youngest broker in the state of California for a little while. And I thought that was cool. The lady at the Department of Real Estate had told me that. And I thought, wow. So I went and told everybody, of course, right? And at any rate, have done real estate for over 30 years. I've certainly enjoyed it, but my joy really came mostly from just helping people and wanting to be a difference maker in people's lives. During that process, I got involved in other businesses while still maintaining. I owned a real estate company, very successful in my own city. We're probably the number one producer in all of Concord, California. And then, of course, surrounding cities, we may have been number 2 or 3. And so that's where it went. I did write a couple books through this process. One of the books was based on stress and anxiety because all life is stressful and creates a lot of anxieties, no matter what business you're in, I think is fair. And I happened to, I'm going to call it, hit it out of the park on that book only because it was timing, and in business, and we'll talk about this, but it was timing. I kind of got lucky in a kind of a bad sense, meaning that there was a lot of popular celebrities that had committed suicide. Unbeknownst to me, this happening. I had just published the book, and I had lots of companies that wanted me to speak on behalf of their company, representing them, letting them know stress is manageable, things are copable, if you will, and so that was it. And at the end of that statement, maybe we can get into this a little bit more. Every night, or at least 3 nights a week, I was traveling, doing speaking engagements at various places, even universities all over. And one night before one of the presentations the following morning, it was for actually California Association of Teachers Union, and it was down in LA. And at the night before, I was kind of just going over my notes and presentations, and I asked myself this one simple question, and it kind of was a game changer for me. I said, am I giving them everything they need? And it was so daunting and not a great place. My brain said, no, you're not. And I was like, what the heck? I've already given 500 of these presentations. What am I mean? What the heck? What am I missing? And at the end of the day, I asked that question, what am I missing? And all of a sudden the word attitude just bombarded my head. and I couldn't get it out of my mind. And so for the next about 6 months, I ended up deciding to write another book. And the name of the book is Attitude. It influences everything. And that, of course, includes stress,
Mhm.
anxiety, work, business, all of it. So I hope that gives you some idea of who I am. I guess I did miss one thing within the first year out of real estate, excuse me, the first year out of high school. I did compete and was very involved in bodybuilding through high school. Didn't play any sports, which is sort of rough and not a great subject, but I was committed to sculpting the perfect body, as I was told. But at any rate, I did win the Mr. Teenage America tall class winner in the year 1986 as part of discipline and the love of the sport, really, and passion.
Right, right. And I'm sure there's a lot of overlap in skills in preparing for a competition and running all those businesses that you've had.
Just no question about it. I mean, I use the word discipline because uh, people used to ask me often, God, how do you have so much discipline to do this? Like every night, every night. And Dan, the only answer I have to them is it didn't feel like discipline. And so when I share that, it only meant to me that I must have loved it that much that it just wasn't hard. I've known a lot of people that are involved in different physical activities of whether it's marathons or great, just great feats of strength. And they all say the same thing that the discipline seems overexposed or overstated because it just didn't feel like discipline. It felt like, well, I like this, I'm going to do it, and I know the results of it.
Right. I was talking to somebody who worked with a lot of bodybuilders, and he was telling me a little bit about the meals they have to eat. And he said something very striking. It always stick with me. He's like, you do, chicken, right? So you don't do any seasoning. It's straight here. He says they don't eat for taste; they eat for
That's
nutrition.
right. No, that's right. No, that's a beautiful point. I will tell you that I want to give myself a little bit of humility here and say, come on, I was a teenager. I didn't have the same struggles that maybe a 30-year-old man would do, or 40 or 50-year-old man with diet. Right? I could literally eat stuff. I will give you a little fun fact, and I did it because I did choose discipline over loss, if you will, and that was that I would chew peanut M&Ms and chew them all up in my mouth and then spit them all out. And I would never swallow it. So I never got any of the calories, maybe 3 calories from just being inside my mouth. But it was enough to give me the flavor and not
Yeah.
have that absolute desire to want to eat them.
I heard that's how the guy who works at the Haagen Dazs factory does it. Is like
Is that right?
they got spit out because like you would get so fat if you
Well,
swallowed every
that's
taste
so
test.
hilarious. I
Yeah.
believe that. That's a great story.
Now you've written 2 books, and you've been gotten speaking opportunities out of it. Did you ever think, by writing just the 2 books, you get all these speaking opportunities? Was that your intention to speak from the books, or did you just write the books because you had a message that you wanted to share?
So I have I have two answers for that, which is weird. And I'm going to tell you the first answer just because this is how it went down. So I published this book. I had no idea what it was going to amount. In fact, the person that was coaching me on how to write the book, he told me right up front, hey, if you have an interest in speaking and this is your desire, this is not the right book to write. And I'd already finished the book. And I was like, well, gosh, I mean, I don't have another book. And I'm like 85, 95% done. And he's like, you've paid me a lot of money. I just want to make sure you realize, though, that this is not a book that companies are going to go and hire you for, because they're not going to want to have all their employees come down to the cafeteria and say, hey, this guy wants to talk about how stressful this company is and how many people have anxiety disorders and, can't go across bridges and get on elevators and all this stuff. And I kind of laughed. I said, gosh, okay, well, you're right. You're probably right. And I said, well, and so this is the second part of that is there is a part of me that really did have a desire to speak. Now, it wasn't necessarily about this book, but it was just, I have felt a calling to want to speak because I love people. I want to share what I have learned, some of the good things, the bad things. And that's just my desire. That's just my heart's desire. And so, but I'll share with you how the book thing came about. I published the book. I put it on my Facebook page. And, it was like I have a decent amount of people that follow me. I think it's somewhere on Facebook, like 4,000 or something. So it's probably a lot more than many. And, but I probably had 100 people, let's say, that reached out. Oh my gosh, that's cool. I'd love to get that book, blah, blah, blah. And so I was excited and I hand signed all of them. And so it was great. And I was actually, this is a real estate transaction, or if you will, real estate exposure. One of the local restaurants in town always wants me to host a hole. And that means that I come out there with my staff and we either pour beers for them or we have them play a game. And it's a full charity event. And we just take one tee box and set up our stuff. And I try to promote O'Brien Real Estate, right? And put it all out there and at least be acknowledged in the community. And so we're there, and there's 144 golfers, because that's how many golfers are allowed maximum on a shotgun event. And so probably the 10th group comes through, and I'm trying to talk to everybody, and I happen to know a decent amount of the golfers because it's local. And at the end, it was all girls, a women's group, and they all drove away. And the lady turns to me and she says, "Hey, Michael O'Brien." And I said, "Yeah, what do you want?" She says, "Are you willing to speak at our association about your book? You're a big author now." We never spoke one word about it, right? At the tee box in the 10 minutes they were standing around on this par three. And so I said, "Yeah, that would be great." And so she was driving away in her cart with another set of, ladies behind her driving away. And she's like, and so I said, "Well, what association are you with?" Like, I have no idea who she is. I didn't know her. And she said, "I'm in the same association as you are." And so I looked at her like dumbfounded, and she says, "The Contra Costa Association of Realtors." And I was like, again, kind of like in shock, like, okay. And then I had this sense of stress, of course, was like, oh my gosh, do I really want to tell all of my colleagues and my competition that I've got this issue I've dealt with, right? This was to help people that I don't really know. And so at any rate, the story is I ended up doing a presentation in front of 300 people. And the first question I asked them, Dan, and I'll leave it at this, was, how many of you here in the room, this was about a month later at this event, how many people here in the room, by a show of hands, have either experienced an anxiety attack or have been affected by someone super close to you that you know exactly what this subject is about? God is my witness. I thought I was going to get 3 to 5 people that might raise their hand. Every single person in that place raised their hand, and I was dumbfounded. I literally turned around on the stage and I thought to myself, okay, what do I say now? Because this is not part of my presentation. And so I said, let me ask you guys a question again. I feel like I didn't ask that question right. And I asked the question, and it was the same result. So anyway, I wanted to at least share that brief kind of surprise to me. And then it blossomed into multiple speaking engagements. I got a lot of people that wanted to speak at schools, and it went from schools to teachers unions to companies, and it was amazing. At every event, I would sign books and sold lots of books, got paid for keynote speaking, and it totally was not at all what I was in search of or expecting. Particularly, I was being told by somebody who I had respected and still do to this day that that's not the right book.
Yeah, maybe we should call you the accidental speaker here.
Yeah, I like that. Right?
Yeah, I think the question you asked yourself a while back, I think it reminds me of Tony Robbins says, "Ask better questions and you'll get better answers."
There's no question about it. That statement by Tony Robbins, and I can just tell you, it was either 19 years old or early 20s. That people ask me all the time, what have you really gotten from Tony Robbins? And that's the number one answer I always give them. I give them that answer, directly what you said. And so I love that fact that you and I are connecting on that statement for him. He opened my eyes that the quality of the questions we ask ourselves is the quality of the life that we lead. And there's just no question about it. That's my message too. I'm not Tony Robbins. I love Tony Robbins. I think he's been a definite mentor for me to listen in on and hear and over repetitively. But that was definitely his claim to fame for my mind.
Right. Now, your latest book is called Attitude, and surely it's been based on your experiences both personally and in business. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this particular show. What can you share with us about what's necessary for an entrepreneur, whether you're serial or just have one, what's the type of attitude that they need to have to run a successful business?
Dan, that's the reason I wrote the book I did, because, in fact, I was sort of doing, there's a word for this, and it may evade my thoughts in terms of like kind of almost a survey or research, I suppose. And I was asking different people, and the first person I asked, which may have been the worst person, I mentioned that I was writing a book and it was about attitude, and she was a woman, and I do look to her as a good influence. And she's like, "Oh yeah, you do not want to be, talking about that subject. There's just, that just comes across as this negative thing." And I'm like, hold on a second. You're taking it in an entirely different way. She thought attitude was something different. And it's so interesting to me that still has had an effect on me of that's her life. Her life that I didn't know, and I didn't know her that well, was that her attitude is negative. And it was negative about many other subjects that I came to learn as I had done some business with her. And so she was probably in some ways some of the reason I even pushed more forward and doing it, because she's not as successful as I believe that she could be, frankly. And so the answer is, in my book, I break it down into just a handful of chapters, real easy. I wrote the book. You have to love this, and I think you will. I wrote the book so that it could be read within 1 hour, because I do believe that as our society has sped up, we have lacked the ability to concentrate for a period of time. And that's why audio has become so popular when you have downtime, driving, and so on and so forth, or doing gardening or whatever it is people like to do. But I really made a conscious effort that I used to go to the store, and I'm a huge personal achievement fan and personal development fan, and got books in the back of me probably here. Yep. And so I too would go there. It's like, hey, I want to get 2 books. And then I'd go from the book that was this thick to like, maybe I'll just get these 2 that are smaller and quicker, and I can get through some, and maybe you learn something. Yeah. So the answer is, I think I've got like 84 pages in the book, and I break it down into the acronym attitude. And the title is actually attitude. It influences everything. And meaning that it's just the truth. It influences our decisions on our family. It influences our decisions on our spiritual health. It influences our decisions on our financial health, our every health. I mean, literally everything we do is based on the frame of reference that we come from, based on oftentimes our own experiences. Mm-hmm. And so if our experiences are poor, I mean, you really are a victim of your own circumstances if your attitude is poor. And it's, in a lot of ways, it's not your fault, but it's your fault if you continue down that path. If you now have that knowledge that, hey, my past does not have to equal my future. That's a Tony Robbins statement, but a truthful one at that says that if I have the knowledge now, I can change my future, and it doesn't have to equal what I learned in the past. So the answer to your question is, I have the word code in an acronym, and I have the word attitude in an acronym. So the X amount of words in the attitude, if you will, I'm sorry, in the word attitude, the breakdown in the acronym is 1 chapter at a time of, what A stands for and what T stands for and what I and U. And they all relate to how our attitudes are really developed, right? So one of them is demeanor. Our demeanor is approach of how our attitude is. And I'm not going to give away the whole book, but, there's certain things, and I'll just kind of throw it out there. And then some of the answers are through this code. And again, I tend to look at things through a very fast, clear crystal glass. It's like, the book is not this level of a scam, like, oh, you got to get the book. I don't have any problem telling everybody about the book. And the code stands for consistent action and optimism. And the D stands for the discipline action of it, or decisiveness, making a decision and sticking with it. And then, so it's just real easy, simple stuff. But what's easy to do is also easy not to do. And so what I've decided is all of those things that are so easy to do, and we can remember them, but we can also forget them. I wanted it to be out so that people could look at it and say, man, this is so simple, and I can apply this in my life. And I use stories from my own experience in every chapter, a very literally a 3-sentence story that happened to me in real estate. Some poor things through expectation is one of the things that I was surprised by, that can kind of fool with your attitude, really.
Mm-hmm. I remember one of my mentors. He says, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility.
It's
Right?
good.
Exactly how now that you know this particular situation or what have you, it's your responsibility to change your particular attitude about it, and really, it really changed the way I my relationship with people, especially people who have said particular things or done particular things, and it made me realize it's my attitude or how my reaction to those particular words or particular actions, because I can be down about it, I can be upset about it, and it's not me doing me any favors.
That's right.
But if I have a particular attitude about it, then I can I can learn from it. I can make the most out of it.
Yeah. No, that's right, Dan. I think that, there's no perfect science to an attitude, but here's the way I broke it down. And it was again at the evening before, and it was sort of an overwhelming feeling that I was not going to give this large audience everything that I knew. You see, that particular audience was hiring me for dealing with students. They were a teacher union, and this particular union within that group was about students that were workers. So they also work. So they had outside work experience, was sort of the what I remember when I was in school. But they call it a little something different now. But neither here or there. The reality was they were high school kids that had more stress for the most part. And so I was showing them different strategies. And here's what I guess what bounced off my shoulder. I have all these strategies and all these techniques and tools and all these wonderful things in this book. But one part that was maybe slipping by was, at the end of the day, in order to go and implement those strategies, you have to have the right frame of mind. You have to have the right mindset that says, look, to your point, there's going to be people that upset us every single day, or potentially upset us every day, or maybe once a month, or maybe just once a year. So when we are in that type of environment, maybe it's a boss that you have to deal with on a regular basis. That's a tough trap for somebody. And I can't say, oh, that's easy, you just have the right attitude. Well, there's truth to that statement. That attitude is the only way that you're going to be able to handle that situation. But the fact is, it's not going to be easy.
Right. Yeah, that takes a very high emotional and mental toll, especially if it's every day. You mentioned your boss mad at you or other people mad at you, and I just finished reading a Dan Kennedy book, but one of my favorite quotes from him is like, if you're not pissing off one person by morning, you're not doing it right. So, but that's more of a marketing play. I kind of understand that particular message. But what would you say, your experience as a serial entrepreneur, kind of a master of mastering your own attitude for particular things that have happened both in business and in life? What would you say is like the one thing entrepreneurs need to know about, like maybe breaking through, right? Maybe they're just not over the hump, and if they could just figure out this one thing, then that's like the domino that knocks everything over.
Well, I am a believer that, and this is something I share with people. So let me at least start with this. I do believe that people need to write down their goals, and I've believed that since I was a young kid, and so I will give some claim to that helped me. By a man, Tommy Hopkins was a sales trainer, particularly in real estate, but then I think he got into all of the trades and showed people on how, and it's funny, sales has such a bad name, and some of that is because of how how some salespeople have, reacted or talked. But really, the real truth is that we are all salespeople. We just are, and if you're married, you're a salesperson, because you had to ask a question that, could have gone either way, particularly if you're a male. And and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that females
Yeah.
can't ask somebody to get married, but if they did, then
Mm-hmm.
they got to be a salesperson too, right? And just
Mm-hmm.
ordering food, we're
Mm-hmm.
salespeople, and people could argue with me on this, and it's totally acceptable that they would. But at the end of the day, even salespeople, when they're selling us, we have to contend with them telling us all this stuff, and we've got to be able to reject them. And so by rejecting them, we're
Mm-hmm.
really selling them on why we don't want it and to leave us alone. And so I would just say
Mm-hmm.
that my belief first is I think that you have to, and I kind of went off on a tangent, but you have to write down goals that are incredibly easy to reach. One thing that I'm not a fan of
Mm-hmm.
with Tony Robbins, was that he wanted us to write these audacious goals that were so far beyond our own ability to even comprehend. And there's a great reason for that. So we can have the magic of thinking big. That's a great book to read if you haven't. And so that concept is to open your horizons, open your opportunities, especially if you're living in a tiny apartment somewhere and you're poor and things aren't going right, right? But I have learned that the reason why we walk is because we were able to crawl first. The
Mm-hmm.
reason we were able to crawl is because we were able to sit up first. And so the reason we were able to sit up first is because we were able to hold our head up. And so I think that we have to have success, because if we don't have any success, it just becomes another mountain that we have to climb. If your objective is to start a business and you want to have 5 restaurants, as an example,
Mm-hmm.
well, let go of the 5 restaurants concept and get one started.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and if you haven't got one started, then go work at a restaurant, right? And so
Yeah.
I know some of this might be silly, and if the entrepreneurs watch this, they'll get it. We have to have
Mm-hmm.
success. And if we begin to have success, it does a couple, 2, 3 things for us. One of which is it builds confidence. It builds
Mm-hmm.
trust that we deserve success, that we can do what we actually set out to do. Um, I'm a huge fan of the list because it keeps you personally accountable, that when you do it, there is satisfaction in checking it off your list. I personally
Mm-hmm.
have a list that I do every single day. I write down 6 things that need to be accomplished. And at 6 p.m. every single day, I rewrite that list. And my 6th item on that list is to write down the 6 things I'm going to do the following day. So in reality, I only have
Yeah.
5 things to do. And if I always do 5
Yeah.
things, I'm always moving forward and I always feel
Mm-hmm.
successful.
Yeah. One of the things I'm a big believer of lists. At least it's worked for me, and I've tried electronic lists and things. Are the one thing I keep going back to is handwritten lists and the satisfaction that I take by crossing that thing off with my pen.
It's true. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very true. I will say this. Um, I've gotten away from it a little bit, only
Mm-hmm.
because, and even though I still love it, I don't always do that, because the one thing I have next to me 24 hours a day is my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my phone, what I have learned to do is I actually send myself a text message. And in that text message, type in my own phone number. I learned it some years ago. And so I regularly check my messages. It's the one thing that I'm always doing. And so when I check that text message, I always see it on there. Like, these are the things you said you're going to do. Get them done. It's going to be 6 o'clock soon. And, and sometimes they're easy. Sometimes they're overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're
Yeah.
tough. Sometimes I don't want to do them. And
Yeah.
a thought, just so you know, in the event that I was not successful in getting it done, I add it back to my list to do. I don't add to have 7 things to do tomorrow. I don't do that. I don't want to feel
Mm-hmm.
this lack of defeat, and I don't want to feel behind. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it down as one of my 5 things. It just has to remain on that list until it gets done. And generally speaking, it gets done. And it's not something that just sits on that list for, days at a time.
Right. I think what's really important is really not to beat yourself up
100%.
for getting behind on the list.
That's right. And that's the
Right.
reason why I don't start saying I got 40 things on my list, 43 things, 50, right?
Right.
From time to time, don't get me wrong, sometimes I will add things to that list because that's
Mm-hmm.
the list that I always depend on. And so I
Mm-hmm.
like to put things on that list that maybe I'm not even 100% concerned if I get it done or not.
Yeah.
It's going to
Mm-hmm.
mix in with my 5 that I have to have, particularly. And this
Right.
is the thing I want your listeners to hear. the most important thing on that entire list, guess what it is?
What is it?
It's the sixth thing. And that sixth
Oh yeah,
item
right, right.
is
Yeah, yeah,
make sure that I write a
yeah,
list for the next day, because
yeah,
that is the
yeah.
first habit I needed to get involved in, which is, these lists are only so good if you do them for a week or two or a month or a year or 3 days or one day.
Right.
But if I
Mm-hmm.
can always at least be accountable to the one thing on that list, that there's been times haven't done anything on the list except for I am
Yeah.
not letting this day end. I have an alarm that
Mm-hmm.
goes off at 6 p.m. every single day, Saturday, Sunday, that says do your list. Even if my list is enjoy time with my family, do this, do that for my weekend, whatever it might be, I want that habit that will never leave me. And that has been a difference maker for me. And I hope that it will be helpful for somebody else.
Yeah. You're talking about how everyone's a salesman, and that's one realization I made on earlier in my career, and I actually ended up taking professional sales training to so I can learn how to influence a potential client to why you should hire me. But you're absolutely right. For a lot of people, um, it's because they've had a bad experience with particular sales. Like, hey, someone's called to sell you cable, but you're eating dinner with your family, right? So a lot of people have connotations. So what helped me too is specifically it was the attitude about sales, right? Hey,
Totally.
I am selling a valuable service.
100%.
Someone needs my help. So it's the way I switch my mind on sales that helped me really do a 180 on how I approach my attitude towards learning how to sell.
I love it, Dan. Dan, I'm going to tell you,
Mm-hmm.
I want to stop you right there because in my book, Attitude, It Influences Everything, the first letter of the acronym A is about approach. And so I absolutely love what you said. And it just, you're taking out the pieces of my book literally right out of my mind. And that was so important for me. At first I was like, I had all these different ideas of, this acronym approach and, but it was like approach is it's the right thing. You have to have the
Mm-hmm.
right approach when you're meeting somebody. And that means every walk of life, that you don't know what somebody just came out of. You don't know whatever the scenario is, right? And so in your case, this you
Mm-hmm.
had the mental baggage, like many of us, including myself, of sales is gross. It's this, it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I have a viable and valuable service to provide to people. Now my approach is I have to change that in my mindset so that I can
Mm-hmm.
have a better attitude. And by having a
Right.
better attitude, I can, be more what I refer to as approachable to people. And that is
Right.
the first step, by the way, in having the right attitude is approach.
Approach.
And so I give you that little bit of free tidbit, if you will.
Hey, I'm here with Michael O'Brien, real estate broker extraordinary, mindset master. Hey, we're getting towards the end here, and what I like to do is ask kind of rapid fire questions to my entrepreneur guests. So if you can indulge me for a little bit, just answer the first thing that pops in your head.
I'll be happy to do that. Don't make it too difficult.
Okay. Um, who do you look up to?
I like this right away out of the gate. I don't look up to sports athletes. I don't look up to the actors and actresses and all of that business. I look up to people that are givers. I look up to people that are trying to help other people and to bring them to a place of what their success has been in life. And I just value those people.
All right. What's the best business book you've ever read?
I like How to Win Friends and Influence People. To me, that squared up probably just helping again.
All right. What's the best business advice you've ever received?
Take risks. I think that's probably the best. I mean, that's a first thought that comes to mind. I know that even people ask me this question. Is it okay to expand on it at all?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I will say this. Okay, so I'm going to back it up. One of my very closest best friends, his father had passed away. This is 15, 18 years ago. He worked for one of the telecom companies. And on his deathbed, basically, he told my very close friend what his only regret was. And, my friend, he's an engineer, and he was like, I want to just say he couldn't relate to it too much, but he told me what he said. And it sort of blew me away. And so from time to time, I've done all these different businesses, right? And I've grown.
Mm-hmm.
And that statement of what he said, I'll text my friend and just say, hey, this is for your dad. And that was that he said, if I was to live my life over again, I would have taken more risks. And
Mm.
so I just tell you, and I remind myself of that because I'm kind
Yeah.
of a math nerd guy that has to think things out and I overanalyze and all that stuff. And so I have to
Mm-hmm.
remind myself. Best business advice kind of came from a person that, Mr. Carlson that shared that with me. And yeah, love that guy. I
Yep.
love him
And
for
then
the wisdom that he shared, even though he didn't have the courage to use it in his life.
right, right. And finally, what's the biggest challenge in your business today?
Well, I mean, I think just kind of what I said, but I think the thing that also comes up in my mind is relying on other people, um, and not that they are not capable. Remember, my background primarily is in real estate, but within real estate, for those listeners that don't know a lot about real estate, there's a lot that you have to depend on other agents, other
Mm-hmm.
firms, mortgage companies, title companies, lenders, and underwriters. And there's a lot of almost like you have to wait around for them to make decisions before you can move forward in making your decisions. And that feels more like not an entrepreneur, and that has carried over into some of the other businesses that I have. Own a few ice cream businesses, and waiting for the health department and them making that. That you got to wait on certain things, and they've got all these government things that
Mm-hmm.
make it more difficult for you to move forward and to take more risks. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think my
Mm-hmm.
solution to that, however, so I don't leave people hanging like, yeah, that sucks, I got that too, right? Is to stay busy, knowing that you can only do what you do, and then have other projects going on, and just knowing that's part of the and this comes from attitude. That's part of the process. That's
Right.
part of the
Right.
puzzle on creating the
Yeah.
right attitude and being in the great and right frame of mind.
All right. Thank you so much. Hey, I'm here with Michael O'Brien, sharing some wisdom with on attitude and being a serial entrepreneur. If we want to learn more about you or more about your books, where can we find them?
Well, Amazon carries both the books. Attitude, here we go. I've got a copy of the book right here. This would be the second book that I wrote. It's, again, only 84 pages. I think that's what it is. Attitude, It Influences Everything. That, of course, is written by me, and that can be found on Amazon, and it's only $10. I mean, it really is a cheap book. And then this is my book. It's a little bit thicker, fatter. I think there's 250 pages or thereabouts. This was Fearing Nothing. And really, it's not just about stress and anxiety, but it's achieving peace of mind in a stressful world. And I think that's kind of the name of the game for a lot of people that do contend with anxiety. And it's a real
Mhm.
fact of life that we've got a sped up world, and we need to learn on some of the techniques and tools on how to slow down a little bit while achieving masses of success.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure and really fun talking with you about your life experience and what you've been able to share with the world. And so I want to say thank you again for being on the show, and hopefully we can talk soon.
Thank you, Dan. I do appreciate it, and good luck to everybody out there.